Hi, this is Landon. Um, this morning I would like to talk with you about the death of George Hodgins. George was a 22-year-old man who was shot by his mother and killed, who then shot herself. It's very upsetting. It's extraordinarily difficult to deal with when the parents of autistic people kill them. It's difficult in part because for those of us who are autistic, it looks very much as though the primary concern of society when it comes to the question of autism is how does it affect our families. There was a recent article from Dr. Eric London, who is part of the Autism Science Foundation, and very well respected, but it was in response to an article about the abuse of autistic people in state-run homes in New York, and other people as well. And in his letter, his primary concerns were for the reputation of one of the drugs being used, and for the feelings of the families of autistic people, that they would feel bad to hear the medication that they were giving their family members disparaged. So disappointing, so disheartening. Autism is not something which happens primarily to parents or family members, and parents or family members are not the people who are most affected by a disability of any kind. Yes, it is phenomenally difficult to have a disabled child, but it's not the same. The way people respond to a situation like the death of George Hodgins, the way many parents respond, is an outpouring of sympathy for his mother. And I understand this because that's what their perspective comes from, right? They understand the stress of caring for someone with autism. And so they feel for her. But people outside the autism community have a difficult time understanding that we are fully human, because many of the things that we tend to praise as making things human, things like eye contact, things like the ability to develop and maintain friendships, things like the ability to clearly communicate one's emotions in a way which is appealing to others. Many of us don't have these things. The way that the nonverbal, and George was largely nonverbal, are treated and valued, it breaks my heart. What do we have to do? How hard do we have to work to teach the world that people who don't talk are people, and that they can be smart, and that they can be bad? I'm really tired of this angels in disguise nonsense, this that all disabled people are innocent and good. Well, no, disabled people are people. with all the full range of peopleness. There are bad disabled people. There are autistic people who kill their parents, not because of, and the other thing is, I am troubled by the extent that we have reached the point where when there is a death, a murder in the family of someone who has autism, we assume that the autism must be the reason, that the circumstances must have been so overwhelming that the death is on some level justified. Autistic people are living through the same economy as everyone else. Autistic people's families have stresses and strains and mental illness, that aren't to be blamed on the identified autistic person. We've got to... Please, parents, change the way you think about these crimes. Please stop thinking them as primarily something bad that happened to the person who pulled the trigger or put the bag over the head. Understand that it is primarily something horrible which happened to someone who should not have died. And maybe actually that's the key point. Maybe it's so stressful to have an autistic child, and particularly to have someone who is nonverbal, someone who is unaware of danger, dependent, needs to be constantly supervised. And I think that those are things that were true of George. Maybe you can't accept that George should not have died. But he shouldn't have. George, he was 22. He should be alive today. And he had nothing to do with the decisions that led to his death. He didn't decide to die, I don't think. His mom, and I'm sad that she is dead too, but she did make that decision, and George is the person this happened to. George is the victim here. George is the person who needs our primary sympathy and mourning today. So please think of him.